अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. To the one who is blinded by the darkness of ignorance, the one who applies the collyrium of knowledge, the one who lights the light of knowledge, salutations unto that holy Guru. Namaste. Today I am Narendra. I am a research associate at the Sri Aurobindo Society, Pondicherry, and I am extremely grateful to Delhi Ashram for giving me this opportunity, particularly to Dr. Bijlani for inviting me here. And today's subject is the inner meaning of Samudra Manthan. Now, Samudra Manthan, the story appears in the Bhagavad Purana and also in the Vishnu Purana. Now, these mythological stories, they are not, entertaining fairy tales or just stories for the sake of stories. The myths and legends always have a deep layer of inner meaning. Some aspect of truth that cannot be conveyed in ordinary language is expressed through the medium of myth. There are 18 such Puranas, like Bhagavad Purana, Vishnu Purana, Shiva Purana. There are 18 such Puranas. Even we can say Ramayana and Mahabharata are also mythologies. And the sages who wrote these myths, they were not writing history or they were not writing stories, like I said. There was a purpose for writing these stories. Plato described myths as fictional stories that illustrated truth. That was the definition of Plato. And there's one American author, his name is Joseph Campbell, who is supposed to be the greatest authority on mythology, comparative mythology. He says, myth is a perennial vehicle for expressing truth. And it is a special language of religious experience. That is what Joseph Campbell says. Now, why do we need a special language? Because the ordinary language is a barrier. What we are trying to convey through the myth is not a rational, logical idea that is conveyed in ordinary fiction. When we are writing in ordinary fiction, that idea can be conveyed in ordinary language because that is well within the realm of logic and rationality. But what we are trying to convey through mythology is not rational and logical. We are conveying something that is above the realm of reason and logic. So a special language is required. Mythology is not so much bound by the fixed mold of logic. Logic can be bent in mythology. And this method has been used brilliantly in our Sanatana Dharma. And all the Puranas, they contain those myths. I'll just give you a small example demonstrating the power of myth. If I am trying to convey the idea of tamas, what is tamas? Then I have to use many definitions. Tamas is inertia, tamas is sloth, tamas is laziness, tamas is gluttony. I have to describe all these qualities to convey the idea of tamas or a tamasic person. But if I just utter one word, Kumbhakarna, you immediately get the idea. Because he is tamas personified, eating and sleeping. So, Kumbhakarna in symbolical language, the tamoguna is expressed in Kumbhakarna. Similarly, Rajas is expressed in Ravana and Vibhishana, the Sattva guna, is expressed in Vibhishana. Though born in the Rakshasa clan, he had that alignment towards the divine and he ultimately could not live with them and he deserted that camp and joined the camp of the god, Rama. Because that is Sattva. He represents the Sattva guna. So he could not live with his brothers. So these three brothers, Kumbhakarna Tamas, Ravana is Rajas, and Vibhishana is Sattva. So through the mythology, these gunas have been very clearly demonstrated. So that is the power of myth. Now we'll go to the story of Samudra Manthan. So that is by way of introduction of what is mythology is all about. All of you know the story of Samudra Manthan. I will not go into the narrating the whole thing. Just in 2 minutes I'll summarize. You know that once the gods were cursed by the sage Durvasa. He was angry about something, so he cursed the gods and they lost all their power and strength. And then it was advised that to regain their strength and immortality, they should churn the ocean of milk to get the Amrita. If they get the Amrita, then their power would be restored. And that was a huge task, churning of the ocean. So they requested the Asuras and they tempted them that if you help us in this endeavor, then you can have a share of the Amrita. You too can become immortal. So the Asuras were tempted and they agreed to do this Manthan with them. And then the Manthan started, and when it happened, then they used a certain, it's a mountain, cylindrical mountain, Mandara, Mount Mandara. So they used that as a churning rod, and Vasuki, the great serpent, the younger brother of Sheshanag, he agreed to become the churning rope. So Vasuki was used for churning Mount Mandara and Vasuki. They were used as the churning rod and the churning rope. And when they started churning, the Asuras on one side and the Devas on the other, Mount Mandara slipped and fell into the waters because it had no support. So then Vishnu, he incarnates as Kurma avatar, the giant tortoise, and he lends support to the Mount Mandara from below. So Mandara stands on the back of Kurma avatar, and that is the support of Vishnu as Kurma avatar. Then the churning proceeds. Then Halahal comes out. Huge, deadly poison is spewed out in the process. There are two versions. One says that Vasuki himself, he was throwing out poison. And another version says that it simply arose from the churning process. And when that happened, that was about to destroy everything. Everything in creation. Then they all cried for help, and Shiva, as you know, he came and he collected the poison in his hands, and not knowing what to do, he simply drank it. And it is if it had gone inside his system, it would have killed him also probably. But Devi came and she grabbed his neck and held it at that position. So that is why he became Nilkant, all that you know. And the churning proceeded. Many wondrous objects came out. And they were distributed to all of them. This Airavat, the elephant, Uchchaishravas, the horse, Kaustubh gem, Parijata, the flower, Kamdhenu, all these wondrous objects they came. But they were not tempted by that. They kept on churning. Then Lakshmi emerged from the churning process, the god of prosperity and wealth. And they, in gratitude to Vishnu, they offered Lakshmi to Vishnu. And finally, sage Dhanvantari, he emerged from the process with the Kumbha, Amrita Kumbha, the pitcher of Amrita, he emerged. But when that happened, the Asuras snatched the Kumbha from Dhanvantari and they ran away. And the Devas, they were left with nothing. So they requested Vishnu, you see, if the Asuras have taken away and we have got nothing, please help us. Then Vishnu appears in the form of Mohini. And in the meantime, the Asuras, they were fighting amongst themselves that who's going to have Amrita first. So after all, the Asuric nature. Then when they saw Mohini, they forgot everything about the Amrita and they just fell for her physical charms. And they were totally tempted by her. So then Mohini she tells them that, let me distribute the Amrita. So they agreed to that, and they were so enamored of her, they would have listened to anything that she had said. So she said, I'll start the distribution with the gods, because they also helped in the churning process, this and that. So she distributes the Amrita to the gods, and by the time the last god has been served, Mohini simply vanishes. And the Asuras do not get the Amrita. So that is how the story goes. Now, this is the story that is there in the Puranas. Now, in the very beginning, I said, our sages were not writing entertaining stories. So there's a deep meaning to all this. So let us understand one by one the different aspects of Samudra Manthan. Let us penetrate to its depth. Firstly, Amrita. What is Amrita? In simply speaking, we understand it as immortality. Amrita, immortality. It's actually realizing one's divinity. As long as man is trapped in an ego, he would be subject to death. Death is for the ego. We are totally identified with our body, vital, mind and ego. That is what we think we are. But our true nature is divine. It's the soul that is a part of the divine, and when the soul rises above this identification with the physical, vital, mental and ego, and merges its being with the Supreme, then that is immortality. Because immortality can never be for the physical body. In fact, you know that Ashwatthama, he was cursed with immortality in a physical body. Ashwatthama was cursed that you will live in your physical body, you will not die. And that was not a blessing, that was a curse. So it is never meant the immortality of the physical body. But now we are identified with the physical body. So when we truly identify with the soul and merge that soul with the divinity, then that is a state of Amrita. That is what is being indicated by Amrita. Then our personality, the limited personality, loses its boundaries. It is no longer bound. When the drop falls in the ocean, the drop becomes the ocean, part of the ocean. So that is the concept, that immortality has also been understood as liberation from the cycle of deaths and births. We call it moksha in Hinduism. So it is rising above the limited ego and identifying oneself with the divine and merging with the divine. That is the state of Amrita. And as you know, one of the greatest prayers in the Upanishad, Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Now I am bound by death, lead me to immortality, from death to immortality. So that is what Amrita is. Now Samudra. Samudra is you can say, you know that the waters, they represent the multiplicity of forms, creation, and the field of consciousness. So any endeavor that we do, spiritual sadhana or whatever, that has to be performed in the field of consciousness. Samudra represents the field of consciousness where the sadhana is performed. And Samudra Manthan itself is basically a symbol for spiritual sadhana. It gives the process of spiritual sadhana. That is how the Amrita is generated. The state of Amrita cannot be reached unless you have gone through a process of sadhana. And Samudra Manthan is basically a process of sadhana. Now we'll come to the Devas and the Asuras. Now who are they? Devas and Asuras are not in some, high, in a different plane, in a transcendental plane or something. Asuras and Devas are inside us. They are never outside, or they are never in a transcendental plane. Asuras and Devas, they reside inside us. They are our good qualities and bad qualities. They are our gunas. Rajas and Tamas are the Asuras. Sattva guna is the Devas. All the good qualities that emerge from Sattva, those are the Daivic qualities. So basically, the human body and mind itself is the abode of the Devas and Asuras. All you see in the Devi Mahatmya or Sri Sri Chandi as it is called, Durga kills so many Asuras. So they are all different tendencies of the human beings. Those Asuras, one by one they come and Devi kills them, Mahishasura, the famous Asura. Then in the other section there is the Shumbha Nishumbha, Rakta Bij, Dhumralochan, all different kinds of Asura, Madhu, Kaitaba. These are all different Asuras that we know that Devi kills in Devi Mahatmya. Those all Asuras are basically human tendencies. If I have some time towards the end, I will define one or two Asuras from the Chandi also and tell you that how they relate to our own tendencies. So Devas and Asuras, basically they are not in some imaginary fantastic plane. They are inside us, the gunas, our good qualities, our bad qualities. They are fighting. The fight is constantly on. Sometimes we rebel against the laws of God, the Rita, and we say, why do we have Asuras? Why is there evil in the world? If God has created this world, why did He allow evil to happen? To that, philosopher and yogi Nalinikanta Gupta, he says, I'll read out the quote to you. The Asura cannot be outside God's infinity. He is there because permitted by Him, indeed forms part of Him, and serves the divine purpose. Asura represents the hard, dark passage through which the ignorant human soul cuts out in the forward march. Right now, in fact, our Asuric nature is more in manifestation rather than our Daivik nature. So this is the hard path that we have to crack and cut and move forward, because we are the Asuras. Now we'll come to Mount Mandara. The word Mandara itself consists of two words, Man and Dhara. That means direct in the mind in a certain direction, in a certain flow, in a certain line, which means focus, concentration. Mandhara, a mind going in a particular stream. So it is concentration. If we take Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga, it is dharana. Dharana means concentration. So when we are doing sadhana, that concentration and focus has to be there. We cannot practice meditation or spirituality unless we are able to direct our mind in a certain direction without it flying into hundreds of directions. If we don't have that ability, our sadhana would not proceed. There is a slok in the Gita, Vyavasayatmanam, Vyavasayatmika buddhi rekeha. For the one who is resolute, his mind is single pointed. And the one who is irresolute, it is bahushaka. It is scattered in hundreds of ways. That is what happens. The resolute person is very single-minded. He is focused. But an irresolute person, his mind is running in all kinds of directions. He is never able to achieve anything. So, the mandhara, we are doing sadhana, so man has to be concentrated. Concentration of the mind. That is what the Mandara, Mount Mandara represents. Now we'll come to Vasuki. Vasuki represents the human ego. It's a 1,000-headed snake. Vasuki is a huge snake, a 1,000-headed serpent. And symbolically, it is human ego with thousands of desires and cravings. That is what human ego is. Thousands of desires, thousands of cravings. So that is represented by Vasuki, human ego. So this human ego has to be kept under control to do the sadhana. That is what holding the Vasuki means. Holding it under control and using it in the process of the churning, manthan. So we are using the mind, single focused mind and ego to carry out the process of churning. I'll come to churning, manthan. So Vasuki is human ego and Mandara is human mind, focused mind in a single direction. Mind and ego being brought into play together to perform the process of sadhana. Now when the churning starts, the Mount Mandara falls down and Vishnu comes, like I told you, as Kurma avatar. He holds up Mount Mandara from below. So this is actually divine support and guidance for our sadhana. Unless we have that, unless we have the divine support and guidance, we won't be able to perform sadhana. So always the divine support is there for our sadhana. Whenever we do it, guidance comes to us in the form of a guru, a teaching, or whatever. So that is the divine support. That is represented by Vishnu's Kurma avatar, supporting Samudra Manthan. Samudra Manthan, like I said, it is the process of sadhana. So Kurma avatar is basically supporting the Manthan. So that is the divine support. And there is one more aspect at another level. The tortoise is a very special animal. It has the ability to withdraw all its limbs and its head into its shell. It can go into it. And once inside the shell, it is protected. So this ability to withdraw itself into itself, this you can call, in yogic terms, this is pratyahara. Withdrawal from the outside world. When we are doing sadhana, we have to withdraw ourselves from our outer activities, at least to the extent that for whatever time we are performing the sadhana, for that time we have to withdraw from the world. If you are engaged with the outside world, we are sitting in meditation and looking at our phone and checking the messages, our meditation will not happen. So that withdrawal has to be there, to be totally cut off from the outside world. This Patanjali calls pratyahara, withdrawal of the senses from the world. So tortoise has this ability. And there is a specific verse in the Gita which says, one who is able to withdraw the senses from their objects, just as a tortoise withdraws its limbs into its shell, is established in divine wisdom. This is Gita chapter 2, verse 58. That mention is there in the Gitas. The ability to withdraw from the outside world. So when we are performing sadhana, we have to be inwardly withdrawn from the outside world. That is the concept of the tortoise. Kurma avatar as divine support and guidance at one level. At another level, it is withdrawal from the outside world. Now we come to churning, manthan. Manthan, as you know, it is being done like this, with the Mandara mountain held vertically, and the manthan is happening horizontally with the Vasuki. Manthan is basically inner churning. It is inner churning, introspection, self-reflection, Atma Vichara. In a word, it is Atma Vichara. Meditation, contemplation, all these form part of the inner churning. It's a process of assertion and negation. We have heard about neti. We keep on negating whatever is not the divine. Not this, not this. Am I the body? No. Neti. No. Am I the vital? No. Am I the mind? No. Am I the ego? No. Am I the senses? No. So this is negation. That goes at one level, and at the other end, we negate what is not the divine in us, and we assert what is the divine in us. I am Sat. I am Chit. I am Anand. I am eternal. I am the soul. These are the assertions. So this process of churning is manthan. This is assertion and negation. Neti as well as iti. Negation of what we are not and assertion of what we are. I am not the matter, I am the spirit. I am not the matter is negation, I am the spirit is the assertion. Neti and iti. So this is the process of manthan. Out of this comes out the Amrit. When we constantly assert what we are, assert our divinity and negate our asuric nature, then the final result of that process is Amrita. So our identification with the body, with the vital, with the mind, with the ego, with the senses, with our desires, so all this has to be negated and assertion of what we are, the divinity that is there in us. Now let's talk about halahal, the poison, the deadly poison. Now, before Amrit can appear, there are a whole lot of negativities and toxins inside us. As long as we are involved in the processes of the outer world, till that point of time, nobody is going to disturb us. But as soon as we go inside and really start disturbing the status quo, basically Samudra Manthan, we are disturbing the status quo. What we have been all our lives, we are trying to change that. And when we try to do that, you can say the system revolts. The system doesn't accept it. The system revolts. So it comes up with negativities, negative thoughts, emotions, desires, lust, anger, pain, suffering, all these things, they're all there inside us. So they kind of rebel and they try to destroy the process of our sadhana. We sit in meditation, but our mind raises such a storm that meditation fails. We are not able to concentrate. The mind is running into hundreds of directions. All this happens. This is a natural part of the process. This inner rebellion that doesn't allow us to proceed with the sadhana. And that is the halahal. That is the deadly poison. That is striving to destroy the whole process. Now, when this comes, how do we deal with it? You know, in this story, Shiva comes and he drinks up the poison. Now, in our process, in our sadhana, where does this Shiva element come in? Now, if you think about Shiva, who is he? He represents tapasya. He's a tapasvi. So he's a tapasvi, he's an austere, absolute self-control, someone having renunciation, self-control, austerity, and a great tapasvi. So when these negativities come, then we have to exercise the quality of tapas and austerity. Then we have to be firm with ourselves. So it is, you can say we have to be strong and forceful to deal with these negativities. And austerity, tapas, these are strong, strong assertion of when a person does tapas, that's a strong assertion. So that is how we deal with these poisons. Suppose you take up a vow that I am going to fast for 3 continuous days. So that is a tapas. That's a strong exercise of the will, that I am not going to have either food or water for 3 days. And there are such vows that people take up from time to time to get rid of the internal toxins. They say that fasting cleans up the system, removes the toxin and all that. So I'm not just giving you an example. I'm not talking about fasting as such, but about austerity, about self-control, about renunciation, all these qualities that Shiva represents. Only he can deal with this poison because he is pure, strong and divine, Shiva. So at one stage we have Kurma avatar, the divine support for our sadhana, support and guidance. And when the halahal comes, when the system rebels and the negativities are thrown up, the toxins are thrown up, then we require the compassion, guidance of the Guru. His spirit of tapas, that we require to steady the process, to give it stability. The Shiva is the Guru who helps us to deal with the negative toxins and impurities and evil influences. Shiva is also referred to as Prananatha, the Lord of the breath. So here also you see the pranayam element is coming in. We had dharana, we had pratyahara, and now this pranayam is also coming, breath control. As you know, breath control also clears lot of pranayam, clears lot of internal toxins. So all these are, related concepts. So that is how this halahal is dealt with. It is a normal process for everyone. It's not that if the negativities are coming out in my sadhana, then I am not fit for sadhana. It's not like that. It happens with everyone. Because those asuras are there in every one of us. Now, when the sadhana proceeds, then come out the wondrous objects. Like I told you, Uchchai Shravas, the Airavat, the Kaustava gem, Kamdhenu, Kalpavriksha, Parijat, wondrous objects come. So these are called in spiritual terminology Siddhis. Siddhis, as they call psychic powers. Sri Aurobindo talks about them in the record of yoga. Anima, Loghima, all those eight Ashtasiddhis they are called. But you see, you can become enamored of these wondrous powers and you can get astray. Your sadhana can get derailed if you get fascinated by these powers. So all the great masters advise us that we should not, even when the powers come spontaneously to us, we should not be deflected by that. We should retain our focus and continue to do our sadhana. That is why when these wondrous things come one after the other, the siddhis, the gods and the asuras, they continue with their manthana. They don't get diverted. But this happens in the case of many sadhakas. They get diverted by this kind of psychic powers when they suddenly come across them. They even start using to gain power in the world. They become miracle mongers and they collect a gathering and they show their powers and they earn money and do all sorts of things. So that's a total fall, basically. Then comes Lakshmi, the god of prosperity, and Shri. So here you see the gods. You look at the world around us. For us, Lakshmi seems to be the ultimate aim of life. Prosperity and wealth. But what they do is, they gift Lakshmi to Vishnu, the one who is supporting the Samudra Manthan. Now, we have to understand that all wealth ultimately belongs to the divine. What wealth we have today belonged to someone else yesterday. Tomorrow it's going to be someone else's wealth. We are not going to carry the wealth over beyond the grave. So whatever wealth we have, at one point of time we didn't have, at one point of time we have, again at another point of time we won't have. So we have to have this objectivity that all wealth, whatever has come in our way, we are trustees. The Lord has placed the wealth in our hands. It has to be used in good work. That is what Sri Aurobindo also says in The Mother, the book. He talks about money in that book. And wealth and lust, they are the biggest obstacles on the spiritual path. Wealth, lust and power. If these three forces are dominant in our lives, then no sadhana is possible. It is not possible to have any sadhana. Wealth, lust and power. So Lakshmi, again, if we are too enamored of Lakshmi, then we lose our sadhana and we fall down basically. And Ramakrishna was very, very insistent. Every time he talked about Kamini and Kanchan, Kam Kanchan, lust and gold. So what they do is, they do an intelligent thing. Lakshmi comes and they offer it to the Lord. And they lighten their karmic burden to make progress in the sadhana. So that was a good thing that they did. They offered Lakshmi to Vishnu. And then the Amrita appears. And as you know, the Asuras take possession of it and they are fighting amongst themselves and Mohini comes. Mohini is again an avatar of Lord Vishnu. The lesson in the story is, and as you know, Mohini basically, she manages to get back the Amrita from them, distributes it to the gods and she vanishes. So, the lesson is, even if we have Amrita in our possession, if we have not conquered the inner asuras in us, lust, because when they saw Mohini, they forgot all about the Amrita. Then the physical charms and beauty of Mohini, they forgot that what they were doing. Samudra Manthan, so much of effort. Halahal came, this and that. After all this, Amrita has come. And as soon as they see Mohini, they are absolutely forgotten their mission. So this is the Asuric tendency. So you see, this is what happens when that inner control, when that inner inner poise is not there, then even if we have the greatest blessing in our possession, there is a danger of losing it, because that fallen nature has not been conquered. So the Asuras are still Asuras. They may have got the Amrita, physical possession of the Amrita, but they are still Asuras. So they are fighting amongst themselves. They see Mohini, they totally forget about the mission. That is what the Asuric nature is. And the word Mohini comes from the word Moha. Moha is delusion. When you are deluded by your own tendencies, you don't perceive truth as truth. You perceive falsity as truth. So Mohini is not real. She is an illusion. She is the magic. She's a magical figure. And they get deceived by that. The gods know that she's Lord Vishnu himself. The gods know. The gods are not they are not charmed by the physical appearance of Mohini, because they are gods. That sattvic quality is strong in them. They can see through the false appearance of Mohini, whereas the Asuras cannot see through that false form. So they fall for it. So Mohini is basically delusion, Moha, delusion. And all her beauty and charm is nothing but a magical illusion. She's not real. And that is how the Asuras lose their possession of the Amrita. Here again, a wonderful quote I would like to read out to you. This is by Manoj Das from his book Myths, Legends, Concepts and Literary Antiquities. He talks about Mohini. What he says: Mohini represented that aspect of Maya which easily bewildered the consciousness, that was not protected by any higher aspiration. Because they did not have any higher aspiration, they were not protected against it, against that kind of an attack, and was preoccupied with its own selfish motive alone. No wonder that a phenomenon, ephemeral in nature, living for a short while, represented by the temporary form of Vishnu, should make the Titans forget what was truly desirable, the nectar. So Mohini makes them forget about Amrita. So this is what happens when the Asuric nature has not been conquered. Even if we physically possess Amrita, we would lose it. We won't be able to hold on to it, because we would fall for all the things of the world. That is what the Asuras ultimately, that is what happens to them. And in the final analysis, the Lord, Vishnu, who is overseeing the whole process, he is the upholder of Rita, truth, order, and dharma. He cannot afford to have the Asuras get the Amrita, because in that case the Asuras will become all powerful and they would destroy the plan of creation that God has. So it is a kind of divine justice also. And Asuras have their karmic account behind them that cannot be ignored. Just because they participated in the process and they helped in the churning, Samudra Manthan, that doesn't make them eligible to get the Amrita, because their karmic burden cannot be ignored. They are Asuras after all. So, and if they get that Amrita, then they would run amok and they would destroy the plan of creation, the evolution of consciousness. It would become a big setback. So that is how the whole story has been presented. And the final part I would like to say, because Kumbh Mela is going on right now. They say that when all this wrangling was taking place, this picture going from here to there, first the Asuras, then again Mohini taking and this and that, a few drops of it fell on earth at 4 places: Prayag and Haridwar on the banks of the Ganges, Nasik on the banks of the Godavari, and Ujjain on the banks of the Shipra river. That is where the Kumbh Melas are held, and the significance of Amrita we have already understood. And since then, Hindus have believed that on Kumbh Mela, if you have that bath, you get a portion of the Amrita, and you become immortal and your sins are washed. But you see, if you do not know the symbolic meaning of the story, even now you see the kind of craze that has been generated for this Kumbh Mela. Crores of people are going, and every day the news is there in the media. But how many of them really understand what Amrita is, what this Kumbha represents? Kumbha is that Amrita Kumbha, that pitcher that held the nectar. So if you don't know the inner meaning, the inner symbolism, then we will do things mechanically, outwardly. But such mechanical performance of outward rituals is not religion. Religion has to be practiced, has to be followed, knowing what it means. Otherwise, it makes no sense. So, like I said, when these myths were written, now you see, we knew the story of Samudra Manthan. Was it an entertaining story? No. These several dimensions that I presented before you, is it possible to convey it in a rational and logical manner? No. The whole thing is absurd. In the ocean, how can they stand in the ocean? How can anybody stand in the sea and do churning? If you ask logical questions, you cannot. The whole concept fails. So it is something beyond logic. So in mythology, it is accepted. When you say this is mythology, this is myth, then you accept it. Acha, myth it is happening in a myth. But if I tell you a story, I'm writing a story and say, how can this absurd thing happen like this? So in mythology, the rules of logic can be bent, like I said in the very beginning. So that is how mythology has been used. And all our mythologies, all the 18 Puranas, Ramayana, Mahabharata, everything is symbolic. If you know the symbolism, it is so beautiful. And it has been my passion in my life, this subject itself, the subject of symbolism. I have studied for about 2 decades because I was very fascinated by it. In fact, I would like to tell you that I have written a book on this where I have presented these different. In fact, what I told you right now, this is just one chapter from my book. Samudra Manthan is one chapter from my book. The book is due for release in April. A Grain of Sand, that is the name of the book, Decoding Images, Rituals and Mythology. We can now proceed with your queries if you have any. Thank you. Mandar Parvat represents the mind, but mind in a single flow. Man dhara. That word is derived from these 2 words, man and dhara. Mind in a single flow. In other words, a concentrated mind. A concentrated mind. That is what Mandara represents. And Vasuki is the ego. So we have to bring the ego and the mind together to perform sadhana. Nectar is not divine wisdom. You can say, literally, they call it immortality. Literally, it's immortality. But immortality in what sense? Not in the physical sense. When you are totally identified with your divine nature, then your identification with your ego breaks. Then you are identified with the divine nature. That is the state of Amrita. That is the state of Amrita. Yes, that is used in the left hand form of Tantra. Vamachara it is used. It is called Shav Sadhana. They sit on the dead body and they perform their austerities. That is a different path. Like you said, conquering fear is one of them. But that's a different path. It's a different path of sadhana. It's tantra. That comes under tantra. No, you see, fear is only one of the evils that we have to conquer. Why talk about only fear? Why not lust? Why not anger? Why not pride? Why not jealousy? All are equally, harmful. So it's all about talking. Shadaripu bolte hai na. We have to talk about the conquering of the lower tendencies or the asuric tendencies. So it's a composite process. It's not just about fear. It's a composite process. All originate mostly in lust. Anger is when your desire is frustrated, you become angry. And when you have something, you fear that you would lose that. That is fear. Fear is always about losing something. That I am safe or I am okay, this would be disturbed. That is fear, insecurity. So all of them mostly have their base in lust, in karma. Mostly they originate in karma. Yes. Yes, there is mention of Rahu and Ketu. Yes, yes, Rahu and Ketu is there. This one of the asuras, he goes and sits in the, he impersonates as a deva and he sits in the queue along with the gods, and he he kind of gets a draft of the Amrita and he's immortal. So Vishnu chops off his head because he cannot allow an asura to live like that. So the lesson is Vishnu will not allow an asuric power to live and wreak havoc. He will not allow that. Even if you get, I think the lesson is, if you are an asura, even if you have consumed Amrita, the Lord will not allow you to live. Because that is against the Rita, against the Dharma. The Lord has to protect the Dharma. And whatever is happening, ultimately Lord has to protect the Dharma. That is why He gives it to the Devas and deprives them of the Amrita. Sri Aurobindo writes a big passage on that. I have it written here, but it's a long passage. He talks about this only. That whatever, it may seem that Vishnu has been unjust to the Asuras. Bhai, wo log bhi to kiye hain. They also did Manthan. They should have also had their share. We may talk like that. But whatever the divine decides, that is always right for the entire plan of the universe. It's not a narrow thing that you did this, you got your reward. It's not such a thing. The big picture has to be kept in mind. Astrology is not my subject of interest. I take no interest in it. If you have read Sri Aurobindo, you see he says he was asked the truth about astrology in his correspondence with Dilip Roy. Dilip Roy puts that specific question to him about astrology. And Sri Aurobindo says, yes, it is true to some extent, as long as you are totally governed by the physical laws, as long as you are a physical, person, materialistic person, some amount of influence is there. But as soon as the spiritual dimension enters your life, then the normal laws of life will not apply, because a higher force is applying now. So you can say these whatever, if at all there is any truth in it, then it applies only to the world of matter. But once the spiritual dimension opens in your life, astrology, I think, becomes irrelevant. Because now you are under the guidance of a higher power. That is why I never take interest in astrology. I have no rings. This is my wedding ring.